Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Claire of Grief Conversations with Claire. I am a bereaved sibling to my sister Lisa, granddaughter to my nan and granddad, and doggy mum to Maggie. Continuing the series on types of grief, I'm going to be talking about living losses with you today. Please do not use this to compare yourself to anyone. This is not a competition. All of our grief is valid. The strength of the love will equate to the strength of the grief, and sometimes the pain equates to the strength of the grief as well that was experienced. Today we're going to be talking about living losses, and I've got a big old bowl of frozen peas here, chopped up onion and potato. My stock is ready. I've got some homemade lemon pesto, and then some oil in the pan because I'm going to make some pea and pesto soup. So unusual for me to do a savoury item, but that's what I'm up to today. So another trusty Waitrose recipe, and I will pop the link to that below. Don't think I'm deviating with this one other than doing pesto instead of basil going in there. And yes, I'm English, so I call it basil. If you're of a generation that remembers, I always want to say basil like basil from Basil Fawlty and Fawlty Towers, but you'd really have to know that one to know that inside joke. So I'm talking to you about living losses. So living losses is an interesting one where it is a loss that does not have a death of a person to go with it. But it's still a loss, and we experience grief in very much the same way with it. I've got my trusty notes with me because, as always, I've got things that I want to make sure I don't get excited about and forget to mention, so you will see me cast my eyes to those. So with all losses, you'll see that it can cross over into all types of different losses, from anticipatory grief, where you will have the living loss occur with a long-term illness or something along those lines when you're able to see the death coming. You will see it also with secondary losses, traumatic grief. It crosses over many different ones, and it's all very perfectly normal for us to experience multiple types of grief. And that's why I'm looking to give you the language so that you can understand what's going on for you, because it's really important to tend to each piece individually so that then you can work through it and feel some ease. So as I said, today's about living losses. This can come from anything from, say, the loss of your home from a flood, a fire, or something else, and everything's gone. So that means all the family pictures, any heirlooms, the couch that you sat on and watched TV, all of those things are gone. And no bright siding anyone here. It is not like, woohoo, you decluttered, and that's a positive. The only one that gets to say that is the griever. Because if someone is actually genuinely relieved of being like, oh, well, I don't have to clean out the attic anymore, that might be a positive for them if it was looming over them. But it's the sense of safety that goes with also that loss as well, and all the things you knew. We've always got to be careful also as the griever to not bright side ourselves as well. It's okay to be sad, and it's okay to feel all of the emotions that go with grief and loss. The other ones that come is really, I'm just going to kind of run through a list of them where you get loss of a job or a profession. You could find it when things that happened in Detroit when all kind of the car companies left, and that's what you did, was your job was attached to those, and now your profession's gone, and you might end up moving as well to be able to go and find work somewhere else, and that's a living loss that occurs there. You can have a change in identity from having been an athlete. As we see, the Olympics was this past summer, and so many of the athletes are there for their last Olympics, and they're in their 20s. Like, that is the end of their athletic career at such a young age, and there's so much more ahead of them, but they don't know what that looks like. Some people will get to go on and continue to have that athletic identity where they go on to be pundits, presenters, or something else to do with that, or coaches, and the identity slightly morphs, but it continues staying in the athletic realm. There can be things of like a divorce, which is the end of a relationship and a future you had seen, but there isn't an actual death that goes with that. On the flip side of what I've seen happen for some folks is that there is a death in the family of, say, both of their parents. the partner is like, I'm out, I'm not dealing with this, I'm gone. And so now that person has a divorce or an end of a relationship that came on the back end of that loss. And that could also be considered a secondary loss. And I'm going to be covering that in the next episode and talking all about secondary losses. But see, this is how it kind of all intertwines with each other. You can have a medical injury that causes you a loss from a loss of a limb or any other capability. An organ or various different things can reach into this realm of a living loss, and a massive adjustment that you have to have that goes along. There can also be a diagnosis as well that changes how you function in your day-to-day life. All big traumatic changes. Speaking of traumatic changes, there can be a traumatic occurrence for people that could cause you to have the loss of safety, loss of security, and your view on the world has changed. You may have quite happily danced around the world thinking everything was wonderful, and now you've had a horrible traumatic experience and your lens to the world has changed. Estrangement is another living loss as well, whether you are the person that is estranged from, I'm going to get a little squishy on the terminology there, or you're the person that is choosing to be estranged from someone else. It's still a living loss there, and it's a grief of, if you're the person that has stepped away from someone, you experience the grief of who you had, the person, the relationship you got, and the one that you did not get as well. There's kind of the two sides to that piece as well, because you grieve the ideal relationship that you didn't have of supportive parents or something else that goes on. Family dynamics can change. So if you've got a matriarch type structure within your family, I always think of kind of like The Godfather as a good example. When that person passes away that's the head of the family, it can be super duper freeing and you've got this whole new identity and you're very, very excited about it because the structure was very restrictive. You always had to go to so-and-so's house for all of the festive arrangements throughout the entire year and you couldn't say no. And now you can actually be like, oh, what would I like to do on the 4th of July or May bank holiday? And I'm switching between US and English holidays there. And you get to now decide. Or you might have found the structure very supportive and therefore then who is going to take on that role as well. So that's a couple of things there. You can have the loss of a location from storms or environmental things that happened. We don't seem to manage to go through a calendar year without there being a storm or a tsunami or something that comes through, wildfires that massively change an area and so many people's lives. And the other one is empty nesting, which is really unusual, I think, for some people to think that there would be grief around that. You could be totally ecstatic that your children have gone off to college, they've now gone off and started their career and they're on and they're blossoming and you're so, so happy for them. But now you've got a home that had been built around for, let's say, 20 something years around the structure of the family and what everyone's needs was within that unit. And now you're one or two people and what that looks like for you now. So many, many different losses in there for you. Something that I wanted to touch on because I think it's really important to recognize these ones as well. So that's living losses for us. As I mentioned, the next episode that's going to come up is on secondary losses, and that's the last one in this series of types of grief. As I've said through every single episode that I've done on this, is any comments, questions, or areas that you feel disconcerted by something I've said, bring it up, drop me a comment. Even if you're seeing this video 1 year on, 2 years on, or something else, still drop it below. If I've covered it in an episode in some point thereafter, I'll point you to that one. And if not, then I will certainly discuss it with you. We all need to be seen here in this grief world. So take very good care of you. And I am going to go on to make my soup. I've got my giant pot here and my eyes, they've managed to hold through the chopped onions that I've got below me that are quite strong. And I will see you in the next episode. Take care.